Countless modifications have become available for the iconic Game Boy Pocket since I bought this blue one back in 1996 when it launched. As of today, you can readily swap out many components for vastly improved parts. In addition to customized shells and buttons, perhaps the single most common and desirable upgrade is to swap the blurry, unlit LCD screen with a modern, crisp, bright IPS panel. Gone are the nostalgic days of hunting for the perfect light to play your games. However, doing this screen upgrade puts extra demand on the lowly AAA batteries. It's even worse if you play your game backups off of a flash card. To remedy this, another popular mod is to remove the AAA batteries and replace them with a single modern 3.7 volt lithium polymer cell. You see, the Game Boy Pocket uses a step-up voltage converter to boost the 3 volts of the AAA batteries to the higher voltages the rest of the system requires. For instance, the processor alone requires 5 volts or thereabouts. This is very demanding on 2 AAA alkaline batteries in series producing 3 volts, and even more harsh on rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries producing just 2.4 in series. In brief, the lower the battery voltage, the more stressful the current draw becomes. Upgrading to a 3.7 volt LiPo cell makes perfect sense. LiPo, or lithium polymer batteries, provide a much more constant voltage under load, and it is much more efficient to step up 3.7 volts to the 5 volts the processor needs, as well as the other component voltages. So as long as the battery solution produces less than 5 volts, the rest of the components are happy. Supplying more than 5 volts would damage components and fry the voltage converter. At peak charge, a LiPo battery briefly outputs only 4.2 volts. So in my quest to build the ultimate Game Boy Pocket, I decided to take the IPS screen mod and LiPo mod one step further. I have scoured the web, and to my knowledge, this is the world's first Game Boy Pocket to feature not only an IPS screen and lithium polymer battery, but an integrated solar panel. And now, I'll show you how to build it. Let's do this. As we get started, I'll tell you about the reasoning behind this build as I talk about the solar panel I'm using. The panel I've sourced fits almost perfectly, save for a few millimeters of lip extending past the cartridge slot. If anything though, this only serves to provide slightly more protection for the cartridge label. The solar panel in no way interferes with cartridge loading, and the slight extra thickness of the panel makes the Game Boy Pocket feel even better in adult hands, in my opinion. The panel outputs 5 volts at a maximum of around 150 milliamps in ideal conditions, enough to charge this 1000 milliamp hour LiPo battery in about 7 hours from empty. The solar panel output feeds into a 5 volt LiPo charge controller. This charge controller features USB Type-C charging as well, capable of charging the battery in about 1 hour from empty. I'll talk more about the components used in this build as we go, and links to the components are provided in the description. The main reason behind integrating a solar panel is to keep this ultimate Game Boy Pocket topped up between uses. Just keep it near a light source to trickle charge. The secondary use case for the solar panel is to ensure you always have a means of charging if you somehow don't have access to a USB port and Type-C cable. The third reason, and perhaps most important, is that it's just freaking cool to make and have a solar-powered Game Boy Pocket. Now, a couple quick notes about actually using the solar panel. If you can charge with Type-C indoors, do it. It makes no sense to turn on a lamp just to slowly trickle charge. You'll waste dozens, if not hundreds of watts of electricity over countless hours versus 1 hour of Type-C charging. The intention is to leave the panel in ambient light you're already using for other tasks. You'll never achieve the full panel output of 150 milliamps with energy-efficient light bulbs anyways. The best way to solar charge is with, well, solar energy. However, if you do use the sun as the primary source, never leave the Game Boy Pocket outside unattended or let it get wet. Both heat and moisture can destroy the device and the battery. Just keep an eye on it and keep it away from anything flammable. Most likely, nothing will happen, but I still have to make the disclaimer in good conscience. I found the best compromise is to leave it inside near a window to collect sunlight, albeit reduced, to keep the Game Boy Pocket topped up. But on to the build. I will follow up at the end of the video with final thoughts and notes about room for improvement, but in the meantime, enjoy the build. If you'd consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing with your friends, I'd be honored, and it would really help our channel spread the joy of curiosity to a wider audience. Now, onto the build. So let's go over the components for just a moment. This is the charge controller. This is a USB Type-C charge controller, 5-volt charge controller, which means I can charge the lithium polymer battery with a typical USB Type-C connection. What is also great about this little charge controller, if the camera can focus on it a bit better, is it has plus and minus connections right next to the Type-C port, which means I can wire up the solar panel to those plus and minus connections. Let's look at the solar panel for just a moment. This is the solar panel in question. It is a 5-volt solar panel that at maximum capacity can charge at 150 milliamps. What's important about those numbers is this. So the solar panel can charge at 150 milliamps. This battery, for example, this battery is a 1000 milliamp hour battery. So charging at 150 milliamps, we just do a little bit of math. 1000 divided by 150 means I should be able to charge this 1000 milliamp hour battery, for example, in give or take, let's say 8 to 10, maybe 8 to 12 hours, depending on the strength of the light available. Now, my plan here with the solar panel wasn't that the solar panel would be the primary source of charging. In an emergency, sure, it can. The idea of the solar panel was to keep the Game Boy Pocket charged up in between typical charging. So you play the game for a few hours, you put it down, just leave the Game Boy facing a light source. It doesn't have to be direct, but just kind of keep it facing a light source, kind of like a calculator uses the solar panel and the calculator. So while it's just sitting for hours and hours and hours, it's collecting, it's trickle charging back into the battery. That's the theory, at least. And I have tested this. I will show some footage here that I've tested a prototype. It works. The theory, it all works. The challenge for me now is to get it to all fit into the very limited space of the Game Boy Pocket itself. I need to fit a battery in there, I need to fit the charge controller in there, and I need to fit the necessary wires, which are kind of off to the side here. All my little tools are kind of off to the side here. You'll see them as I go. And then one of the biggest challenges is, how do I mount this solar panel? I've sourced the solar panel and it fits just beautifully on the back here. You can fit a Game Boy cartridge in there just fine. It's amazing. I will include links to the materials in the description of the video, by the way. How do I do this the least destructive way possible? That's all things I'm going to have to figure out. So I guess now's a good starting point to say, without further ado, let's do this. So first I'm going to go ahead and start disassembling the Game Boy as completely as possible. I've already removed several of the screws. So let me remove the last 2 remaining screws. These are tri-wing screws. They are not Phillips or flathead. So let's remove the last screws that I have in here. Okay. There we go. So I have the back cover removed. Let me get that last screw out of there. By the way, the Game Boy Pocket has 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 more in the battery compartment. So let's open this up and let's kind of see what we are working with here. All right, you can see that the IPS screen mod has already been performed. So all I'm worried about here is basically wiring up the charge controller and seeing which battery will fit, which thickness of battery. I'm hoping the 2000 milliamp hour will fit. But man, that's going to be a stretch. I highly, highly doubt it. It may be a stretch to try to fit the 1000 milliamp hour battery in here. So batteries, charge controller, and mount the solar panel some way that still allows accessibility into the Game Boy itself. And pack all the wiring in here. In a situation like this, it's all about making as much room as possible in the case to fit components that were never designed to fit inside of it. So I'm going to start by removing the positive and negative battery posts on the circuit board, and I'm going to cut out the mold for the AAA batteries in the back part of the case. Okay, so I've removed the battery terminals, and now I have the positive terminal here and the negative terminal over there. Now what I'm going to do is remove this little battery plate in here, which allows for a series connection of two AA batteries, or AAA batteries, I'm sorry. But I'm going to remove it before I start cutting out the mold. Okay, so I got that out. It is ready to start cutting, and I'm going to cut away as much as humanly possible while leaving, for now at least, if I can, leave the two screw posts. I have a feeling that I might remove them and then just use these 4 screws and some other way of securing the case. But for now, I'm going to try to keep the posts and see what we can do from there. So really, I can cut out everything that this battery cover covers except for the screw posts, at least for now. And I will try to do my best. That's the best we can ask for, is just to try to do your best with a tinker. Do your best as safely as possible. I am left-handed, so this is going to be hard to do with my right hand. I want to make sure I'm cutting just what I need and nothing more. Let me turn up the speed. Eventually I'll get the sanding tool out and kind of clean up these edges. But let's just kind of see where I'm at. Oh, that's actually pretty good. Let's keep working our way around here. See where we're at here. Don't worry, I'm going to clean whatever up. I'm going to make this as nice as possible. Progress has occurred. Well, currently ain't pretty, but we got the bulk of it out. So that's progress. I'm going to see if one of the sanding tools will start helping me out here. Yep. Okay, so we'll see if that works. Let's see if we can put the battery case back on. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. That's what we need to keep the battery case back on, and I left the 2 screw terminals in case we can still use them. If not, I'm going to cut these out, like I mentioned. So the test here right now, and I will vacuum later. I'm going to move the mat for a moment because I want a clean surface for this next test. What I want to test right now is battery fit. Can I even use either of these batteries? I'm going to start with the 250 milliamp hour battery and see if it will actually physically fit in the case. I doubt it. Capacitors here. I don't think so. Don't think so. Don't think these batteries are going to work. Nah, it's too much. You can see that even the capacitors sitting there, it would probably fit if I got rid of these 2 screw posts. Even tilted up a little bit on those capacitors. You know what? I am going to go ahead and get rid of these 2 screw posts because you can always order more shells. They're not very expensive. You can order more Game Boy Pocket shells. So I'm going to make the executive decision right now to get rid of these 2 battery posts to see if I could fit this 1000 milliamp hour battery. And removing these 2 posts, not ideal because you're only left with these 4 up on the top half. I figured out some other adhering situation down here. But removing these 2 posts will give you a lot more room to work with inside of here. So if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. I can get another Game Boy Pocket shell. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these posts. I knew it. Well, my rotary tool died and is now charging, but I'm going to see if these flush cutters can do the job. I'm going to try it with the cover on. Probably not gonna be the best, but oh, we are so close. Ooh wee! So that's a 1000 milliamp hour battery in there. Let's put the battery cover on. You know what the next test is, though, right? The 2000 milliamp hour battery. But I am not holding my breath. Oh, I've noticed something. This little tab hits the battery. Oh, oh no. Oh no. All right, let's, nah, that's not gonna work either. Dang nab. Let me think here. I just need a little bit. You see? Oh, frustrating. But there are no instructions for mods like this. So that's kind of par for the course. You don't know really until you try. I also see that. No, it could fit. The actual case itself can go. Gosh, that's a bummer. That's a bummer. I really wanted that to be able to clip in. So, I need to make a decision at this point. I don't want to cut this clip off. I want this to be able to close. Then again, there's another idea at play here. Don't worry about that, period. And just use the solar panel itself to cover it up. That is looking like kind of a winner right now. I can always come back later and, you know, figure something else out. But I think that's it. So if I keep the panel like this, that just means to get to the battery, I'd have to just undo the screws and take the whole case off like that. I think that's it. Because you shouldn't have to access the battery, the lithium polymer battery. It's not like replacing AAA batteries. It's just, it should sit in there for years and years and years and years, and you won't need to access it. But if you do need to access it, it's just a matter of removing a few screws. And there you go. I think that's what I'm going to do for now. So I am not going to modify this cover. I'm going to keep it just off to the side, but I will keep the battery kind of sealed away in there. And if you need to get it to it, you can remove screws to get to it. I think that's the way it's going to go. Anyways, I'm just chuffed that this fits in there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's gonna be nice. Nice. That makes me. This pleases me. Then again, I'm not done yet. we could run into another problem. And likely will, because when you're tinkering uncharted territory like this, things will go wrong. Something will go wrong. The rest of the build is not going to go easily. I'm just setting myself up for that expectation. So what I want to do now, this is one of the hard parts I was kind of, not dreading, but causing me consternation. I would like to have this fit flush on here, like I mentioned. Now you can see you have a couple of lead choices off of solar panels. I can either go off the plus and minus right in the middle here, or I could take these little wire leads off the sides. I'm not going to take the wire leads off the sides because there's one wire lead coming over here in the cartridge slot, and then there's one over here. Actually, the one over here might not be too bad because it goes right through this opening. But I want it to be flush because I could run a wire across here and then wire there. But if I had a wire running across here, that means the solar panel would be kind of wobbly. I want it to be flush. So what I want to do, yeah. So you see these two leads. I need to figure out where these two solar panel leads will wind up on the case, and then I will just cut a little groove in the case. I'll probably just do that anyways, since it's going to be covered up with the solar panel. Yeah, I'll probably just cut a little groove up the middle here to allow access to these. Okay, so let's do that. I can probably do that with the flush cutters. I'm going to go ahead and do that just right up the middle. You can also get more of these stickers. There's plenty of replacement parts for Game Boy Pockets, at least aftermarket. I will keep going up, and I will smooth it out with the sander as usual. So you can see that should give me access to, yeah. That would give me access to this lead off of the solar panel focus camera. You see? Gives me access to that lead, but I need to go further back to get access to the other lead. And I'm just going to go up a bit. That's probably all that I will need. Before I clean it up, I will see if I can see both leads of the panel through there, or if I need to cut more. So I'm going to get it flush where it about needs to be. Not quite. Not quite. I need to... Well, I can still solder from there, but I do need to go up more. I'm going to widen this a little bit and go up. I'm going to widen this a little bit and go up a bit. Yeah, I think that's going to do. When I sand off this edge a little bit, it should be easy access to both those terminals. Wow, this is... I mean, this is a difficult project, but it's working out fairly nicely. Hopefully those aren't famous last words. Okay, that looks pretty good. That is awesome. Let's see. Oh, the leads are perfectly accessible. So at this point, I can adhere the solar panel to the back of this Game Boy. I can use super glue. I'm going to use super glue because I want it to be very flush. So that's what I am going to do. I'm going to use super glue. Oh, that's nice. That is just so nice. And I still got to remove this plastic film off of here, but I'll do that later on. I don't want to damage. I want to minimize the damage to the solar cell. Oh my gosh. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it temporarily back together to make sure we're still on track here and to see how it feels in the hand. Now in my mock-up I did some tape and it felt fine. Some Kapton tape holding the case together with the solar. That feels great. That feels great. That extra little kind of maybe millimeter, if it is even a millimeter of width, like it feels really good. Really good. Oh gosh, I'm so happy so far. Nice. Why hasn't anybody else tried this? So, I can see kind of little mistake. Minor mistake. I could fix it if I needed to, correct it. I almost covered up the polarity of the solar panel, but I can see that this one up here is positive and this one down here is negative. So on the positive side of the solar panel, I need to solder a diode that allows voltage to travel only one direction. I want voltage to go only one direction out of the solar panel. I do not want any voltage to come back into the solar panel to harm the solar panel. So I put a diode on the positive end to make sure that electricity only can go out of the solar panel and electricity can't come into the solar panel. So I'm going to go ahead and solder that on right now. I'm going to clean this pad off first, actually. So here's my diode, and I want to show you real quick. So you see that silver ring around that end of the diode, that silver ring? That is where the electricity comes out of. So electricity can only go through this way. So I'm going to trim this diode up a little bit to kind of just fit better in the case, and I think going halfway up. I've got more of these diodes if I make a mistake with this. So I have it about like that. I'll trim this other piece too. Yep. When you cut, always cut longer than you need on the first cut because you can't add material back onto it, but you can always reduce material off of it. So what I'm going to do at this point is solder a piece of wire onto the end of this diode, so I don't have to be holding the soldering iron against plastic to do it. I guess I wouldn't really. It's just going to be easier if I add the wire to the end of this diode. Now, so let's do that on this actual soldering pad. Got a little wire here. That will be our positive. Green will mean positive. Bust out the solder. I'm not a professional at any of this, obviously, if you haven't been able to tell at this point. But what I'm going to do now is kind of tin the end of my soldering iron a little bit and see if I can't add this wire. This is very tricky because it's so small and fiddly, but we will see if I can make it work. I've done it in the past. I have made it work in the past. I'm sorry if you can't see this part as clearly as you would maybe wish to. Let's see. I'm going to add a little solder to the end of this wire as well. Oop. Tin the end of the wire. That should be pretty good. Alrighty. That should be... It's a decent little connection. Good. Seems strong enough. I'm probably not going to need all of this wire. I'm going to trim up this wire, but again, you want to start with a longer piece than a shorter piece, because you can always make a long piece shorter, you can't make a short piece longer. So now I will solder this to the solar panel. I'm going to add a little solder to the positive lead of the solar panel first, though. Try to get an angle where the camera can see it a little bit. Good. That's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and do the negative side also. Perfect. This diode on the positive connection of the solar panel is critical. Don't be wiring solar panels to thing without a blocking diode or one directional diode, because you do not want voltage going back into the solar panel. You know what? I need to test something. I need to see if the cartridge can clear this. So I'm going to put the case back together. Going to grab my Golf cartridge and see if it looks like it'll be just fine. Oh yeah, perfect, like a glove. But now let me solder the lead on there and see if it still goes in like a glove. I'm sorry, I'm lame sometimes. Sometimes. It needs to, I might need to come over like that so it stays as flush down there as possible. And that's, again, why you cut longer than you need, because I need to make a little right angle here. Yep, that will be absolute perfection. Nice. Get these pliers off. Okay. That looks good, and I should be able to bend it a little bit. That looks all right. That looks all right. That looks like it's not gonna short on that negative lead. I'm gonna put the case on again and see if the cartridge clears that diode. I think it should, but you always want to test these things first. Yeah, you can tell with that angle. So the cartridge connects right up here. You can see that the leads are behind that, so we're good. But again, better safe than sorry. Perfect. So I'm going to do my negative lead now. Purple will be negative. These angles are difficult. Good. Good. And at this point I can do a test. I'm going to get the voltmeter and make sure that we are getting some voltage from this positive and negative lead here. So let's get some alligator clips and the voltmeter. So I'm going to connect the alligator clips to the ends of these wires. White will be positive, yellow will be negative. Sorry, let me get this at a better angle where you can see these connections. Turn on the voltmeter. You can see we're already technically getting a teeny tiny bit. I've got the lamp up here. It's a fluorescent lamp. That's fine. I just want to see that there's voltage showing up through the wires. And we do. So I've got the film. The plastic film is still on the solar panel itself. So that's robbing a little bit of voltage. Plus I'm far away from the light. Let's get further towards the light. Blinded by the light. Yeah. Okay, so even with the film on there, you're getting exactly what you're supposed to be getting, voltage-wise. Current-wise, not so much. Good, my soldering has worked. The solar panel works. Now, what we need to do is figure out where we're going to put this voltage controller. So the solar panel leads, the positive lead is going to go to the positive side of the input, which is right here, and the negative lead's going to go to the negative side. You can't see it with that angle. Okay, so positive is over here on this input, negative is over here on this side, and you have the USB Type-C right there in the middle. I'm going to pre-solder these leads right here on the actual charge controller. So trusty solder, trusty soldering iron. Always solder in a well ventilated area. All right, that's that looks good. That's good. This could be a little better, so I'm going to add a little. Good. There we go. So I've got to think now where I want to mount this. And I've got some Kapton tape. And I'm thinking, I mean, if possible, I'll explain in a second. I'm not going to put this little board right on top of the circuit board. But I got to think now what I want to do here. I've seen other people mod where they take the power input of the Game Boy and they remove it, and then they kind of cut out here and they replace it with the Type-C connection. But I want to see if I can just leave all these intact and put the Type-C connection up here and then carve out this side of the circuit board to give you a better idea of what I'm looking at here. Carve out this side. Just leave all three connections. I wonder if I can do that. But before I do that, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to add a little bit of shrink tubing over here on this connection. I could have wrapped it up in some Kapton tape, but this would be better. This looks counterintuitive, but you just barely get the flame on the tubing. I mean, barely. You can also use a heat gun. I don't have a heat gun. So this is kind of what I'm left with. Yeah, that worked. That's good. You just barely kiss it with the flame. You don't hold the flame on there very long at all. It's just barely to get the shrink tubing to shrink. Good. That worked just fine. So let's see where I can put this. I'm going to go ahead and Kapton tape all these little leads and stuff around here at this point. Kapton tape is not conductive, so you want to put it over things that you don't want to kind of short out with each other. Okay, so with that Kapton tape on there, I can now set this circuit board here free of worry that it's going to cause a short with anything else. Still not convinced that this is going to be the best placement here, because the battery still has to go on top, and it still has to, everything still has to close together. So I'm actually going to just leave it here and put the battery on it and then the case together and see if that will work. See if it'll shut. Okay. Almost. So what's turning out to be the hardest part is figuring out where to mount this charge controller. There's some more trimming I can do over here to help give me a little bit more room. Every square millimeter counts. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of these little plastic pieces. So I just realized something. Now that I'm not using this battery door area, I'm not using the battery door, I really could just cut out everything because the solar panel would cover it up. That would give me an extra, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter of room or so. But for now, let's see what I can get done like this. Now, there is some room for improvement in this build. Most glaringly, the hot glue butcher job installing the USB Type-C charging port. Someone with better tools and more skill than I could make this much cleaner. The second biggest change, if doing it again, would be to clear out as much shell as possible under the solar panel, since the solar panel effectively becomes the lower half of the shell. Every extra scrap of interior volume, the better with such a small device. The third would be to possibly source a more rectangular battery. This would fit better and could possibly be found in a higher capacity. The fourth concern is the solar panel covers the bottom two screws in addition to cutting off the posts entirely. This means only the 4 screws secure the top half, leaving the bottom half less secure. The reconciliation made was to use a tiny dab of super glue in the bottom corners. The rationale being that the battery inside can last for years, if not over a decade, so I may not have to open the case again for years. But when I do, I'll just carefully spudge open the corners. I know what I'm about to say might be a cop-out, but gluing devices together is the modern norm. Have you ever tried to change the battery or service a modern smartphone or tablet? It's all glue holding the case and screen together. Securing a device case with screws is becoming increasingly rare. The bummer with this Game Boy Pocket mod is that ideally, modding would keep retro tech as stock as possible, but sometimes compromises need to be made. At any rate, this is definitely an area of possible improvement. As for battery life, I can only speak for the 1000 mAh battery I'm using, and it varies wildly depending on multiple factors such as screen brightness and whether or not you're using a flash cart or an OEM cartridge. Using an OEM cartridge at minimum brightness, you can reasonably expect around 10 to 12 hours. Using a flash cartridge and high screen brightness, around 2 to 4 hours is not unreasonable. And if that 2 to 4 hours doesn't sound great, consider that the battery life across all models of the Switch varies between 2.5 to say 9 hours. So getting between 2 and 12 hours on a Game Boy Pocket with a 1000 mAh LiPo battery lines up fairly on par with modern hardware. If we extrapolate a bit on solar charging, it equals, at best, to around 2 hours of gameplay for every 1 hour of ideal sunlight charging, given minimum screen brightness and using a simple OEM cartridge. But again, the solar panel is meant to be supplemental charging, not act as the primary source under normal use. So final notes before wrapping up, I have seen somebody add solar charging capability to other models of Game Boy, but nothing is well integrated with an IPS screen and LiPo battery. I suppose you can do a similar mod to a Game Boy Color with some more extensive shell modification to cut off the battery bump and to fit the solar panel and LiPo, and perhaps I'll try that later. The original Game Boy could theoretically use a slightly larger panel, but it operates at 6 volts and thus would require more modification to power delivery. I suppose you could add a solar panel to the Game Boy Advance, but it would be smaller. But this is the joy of modding, figuring out what is theoretically possible and thinking about how to make it a reality. So let's have at it in the comments below. This is relatively uncharted territory for the Game Boy Pocket, and it will be wonderful to draw upon the knowledge of more experienced modders and engineers. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing so you don't miss more curious content like this, and don't forget to hit that like button and share this with your friends. If you're ever in the Houston area, we'd love to have you at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, where you can learn more about all forms of energy production on the 4th floor in the amazing Weiss Energy Hall. Until next time, stay curious.